Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown. And today we're going to go look at a case. This young man who was murdered 25 years ago in Willard, Ohio. His name is Danny Violette. And I did work on this case. And actually, it's been a long time since I've even thought about this case. It was one of my earliest cases I'd ever profiled. The family contacted me. The father of Danny contacted me and got permission from the police for me to come in. And so I did drive to the location and I met with the police and I was given some of the police reports and some of the crime scene photos and none of the autopsy photos. Not sure why that is. And I'm looking back more than 2 decades at this case. And I will tell you just up front before I get started with this, that my memory is a little bit weak, shall we say, but there are a few things I absolutely remember. And I have the profile in front of me. And one of the reasons I'm looking at this case is because I got contacted by a guy named Dennis Cooper. He has the Culpable podcast on Tenderfoot TV. I will link it. There is he has a case review essentially of this case, and the brother of Danny was on there talking, and he wrote me that he had done that one segment, and he asked if I would come on his show and talk about the case. He said, "I'm reaching out to you because I received a copy of a profile you did on the case back in 2004, and they got some kind of FOIA request." It said, "Your opinion about the case, where I think the crime occurred, which is in this cornfield, was very eye-opening. For me, as many of the local rumors say his body was dumped there," which is true, and I'll get into all of that. "I think you've raised some very good points." Actually, I don't know if he asked me to be on the show. Let me say that again. He said he'd love the opportunity to chat with me, and I know it could really assist in my investigation. Please let me know if you'd be open to this. I did respond. I asked, how he got hold of my profile, and he told me. And then I asked if he had access to, I told the autopsy photos and the autopsy report, things that I said I would love to review that. But I have not heard back. It's been over a week. I haven't heard back. I told him to give me a ring, and he hasn't given me a ring. And I don't know what the issue is. Maybe he just got really super busy, but I don't know why. But I thought I would go ahead and do my own show on this because the family's trying to get closure on this, trying to get some work done on this. And this is very recent that they've come forward to try to get this case closed. And now, mind you, I always say this is an educational show. I'm not here to solve cases. I'm not here to basically do investigations now. But since I already did work on this case, I'm willing to put forward my profile, and the family is free to contact me. And if anybody can give me more information on this particular case, I can review. Maybe my profile isn't quite accurate because I did not have access to everything. And so I'll call this part 1. And if the family contacts me and has more information they would like to share with me, maybe I could do part 2, and maybe I'll have some influence on getting anything going with this case. So anyway, that's the basics of this. Now, let me say hello to everybody who is in the chat room. We have a good crowd here today. If you'd like to be in the chat room, it's for patrons only, but all of my shows go public after I finish doing the live show. Let's see who. Mary has just shown up, and Carla has shown up, and Clarissa and Kelly and Allison and Loretta and Hoppa, and let's see, Dogs Discussion, and Lex, and who else has just come in? Marianne has just come in. Did I say Alex? I'm not sure. Some of you I've already said hello to, and if I missed you, sorry. I'm glad you're all here. Wow, it's a good crowd. Anyway, and Joanne just rolled in. All right. So, welcome everybody. And again, if you would like to be in the chat room, click on the link below in the description. It's $5 a month. There are 8 shows. There's 2 every week. One is a case show like this one. And I also, during the week, I do a hangout where I include a lot of stuff from the news or what people want to know about. And it's just kind of a rolling 2 hours of different information and different explanation and analysis. If you don't want to do that, but it does support an educational channel, so please do. But you can also just subscribe to the channel. That helps as well. Like the videos, click the little bell for notifications, check my playlists, because I've done a whole lot of cases, and a lot of them maybe you're interested in and didn't know I've done. If you have a specific one, please go to the search engine on YouTube, put in Profiler Pat Brown and whatever the case is, the name of somebody, and see if it comes up as already being done. You can also support the channel with buying any of my books below the little $sign. Okay, onward. Onward to the case. Okay, where was I? Yeah, I'm here. All right, let's get back to this. All right, so this is, I really wish I remembered more. And, this is what I tell the police detectives all the time. When you're working on a case, it's all in your head. You can see everything. And as you're writing notes down, some of the notes are still in your head and you're only writing partial notes. And what will happen is over time, if you go back to review the case, you'll be surprised what you cannot remember. Because if you worked on a lot of cases, they all start blurring and you don't remember all the details. And if you're no longer working on the case and some other detective comes in, or a profiler or whatever, somebody reviewing the case, they're reading your notes, but all that stuff that was in your head is gone. And that same thing was true for me, because I'm looking back up, I'm like, where are my notes? I was still 25 years. I can't find them. Now, maybe I've moved. I don't know whether things got lost, because back in the day, we did more things writing. I just don't know. I have no memory of it. So I have the profile, and I have the information from his dad, and I have some memories in my head, but it's a little shaky, which is frustrating, because I wonder, if I could only review everything again, it would be helpful. So essentially, what happened? Let me just show you a couple pictures of the Danny. He was only 17 years old at the time, and here he is. Just a couple different pictures. Mind you, he had some issues. He was bipolar. He was on lithium. He smoked a lot of marijuana and drank, and so he had some issues with drugs. He was a wrestler, and people really liked him. They said he was super friendly, give his shirt off his back, which, oddly enough, the shirt was off his back at the crime scene. But it seemed like he was a fun guy and a lovable guy, but a guy with a lot of problems. Okay, so, and that always complicates things when you have a victim that his own behaviors can put him in harm's way, one way or the other. Whether when he ran out of the house that day that he was last seen. Let's say he was last seen. He went missing on a Saturday in October, and he walked out of the house, and that was it. They didn't know what happened to him after that, until his body was found 10 days later. I believe it was 10 days later, in a cornfield. Let me show you an exact picture of where in the cornfield, because there's like a little arrow I have here somewhere. Where's my picture with the arrow? Yeah, there we go. Okay, right there in the cornfield. Now, I'm not sure that arrow is really correct. I don't know who put the picture together, mind you. It was just outside of town, 2 miles from the home. So it's not far away, but just over the town limit. 2 miles away, and about 100 yards off of the road. The father told me a good distance off the road. The father also told me he didn't know if there was an access road, and he says, I think not. All right. So he was on the edge of this cornfield. Now, this is extremely important, because I'm going to read you first what people think happened to him. This is what, I don't know who gave this information out. I don't know whether this is gossip. I don't know if the police ever told the family this. I do not know. But let me find some of the information about what they were told. The father said he was first told it might have been a suicide, but that didn't seem to make sense because it was asphyxiation by strangulation, but there were marks around his neck, but no, he wasn't like hanging marks. They found him with his pants on, but his shirt off. The shirt was off in the field. This is very important. And his wallet was there. Initially, they said he was beaten to death, but he was 10 days face down in a cornfield. So he is purple and black and discolored over his face. That's lividity. That's when all the blood settles. There were no bruises, no marks like he had a fight, and nothing under his nails. So this is very interesting. We're talking about there wasn't a beating, there were no defense marks in that way. But you're going to be surprised at some of the stuff I'm going to say in a bit. All right. So on Saturday afternoon, this is before he vanished off. His wife said there was something wrong with him. He's on like manic depression and bipolar stuff. He'd been in the hospital a few times. He had been at a party and he may have had LSD in his system. They won't tell me if he had depressants in his system. And so some kind of druggy thing going there. All right. Now, this is something else they said. That there were tracks across his chest, like an ATV, but there were no broken bones, but something like had run over his chest, like a vehicle. And the claim is that he was dumped in the field. All right, let me pull up that's what the dad told me before I showed up there. Now let me tell you a little about what other people said. Okay, there is a Facebook page. I want to let you see that. This is Justice for Danny Violette. And so this is a Facebook page. And on the Facebook page, there is some information. And this is a woman who's really been promoting this. Hold on a second. Why is... Sorry, I'm having a blur problem over here. What in the world is that? All right. There we go. No, what in the... That's very strange. Hold on a second. Why is everything blurring out on my... Okay, I'm going to read it. For some reason, it's blurring out on my... Okay, I'm going to go someplace else. My iPad's acting funky. All right. So this is from Justice for Danny Violette. Danny's body was found by a farmer in a field off Town Line 12, 11 days after he was last seen. The red lines in the photo, and this is the other one I showed you. I guess that's the red lines in the photo. They're kind of hard to see, but they're red lines there. Represent Willard Corporation limits. This field is literally right outside of town. If you are from this area, you know that there are tons of fields, much more remote than the one Danny was found in. This is a good point. So this is right outside of town. So it wasn't like if he were being dumped someplace, you kind of wonder, why would you dump him right there? Why wouldn't you dump him in one of the many other cornfields so he wouldn't be discovered as soon, at least? So she says, what can this location tell us about where Danny was after 7 p.m. Saturday, October 24th? I think, this is a person who wrote the Facebook page. I think this suggests Danny was in town or close to it. Okay, I'm good with that. If he was outside of Willard, why would anybody take his body toward town? This is also a good point. People, police patrols, and were there. Why, if this person, I think this is probably what's her name here? Danielle. I'm thinking this is Danielle talking. I'm not sure. But she's good, right? If he was way out of town partying someplace, why would you do something to him and then bring him back to town? Why not just leave him far away? And so she's saying that he probably was in town or close to town. This I absolutely agree with. Willard is not a big city. If Danny was close to home, he was with people he knew. Again, I agree with that. That's very logical thinking. Why would he be with a whole bunch of strangers if this is his own communities that he hangs in? If you were from Willard, you probably know them too. Okay, I like what she had to say there. Now, she had to say a couple other things. Let me see what else she had to say. Okay, so this is Danielle talking, but she's doing also now that I don't know if the Facebook page is the same person, but there is also that's the Facebook page. There's also a GoFundMe. There's the GoFundMe. And so this is what she says, Danielle Allen on GoFundMe page. I've started this fundraiser in hopes that justice can finally be obtained for Danny Violette and answers can be provided to his family. 17-year-old Danny Violette was last seen by his family on October 24th, 1998. 11 days later, his body was found in a cornfield right outside of Willard city limits. His cause of death was asphyxiation. As far as I know, that is accurate. He had ligature marks around his neck. Not sure that's accurate. Post-mortem abrasions. And if you remember what post-mortem and antemortem. Antemortem is something that happens before death, and post-mortem is something that happens after death. The claim here is that there were post-mortem abrasions showing his body had been moved. And I did see the crime scene photos. Now, I can't remember how good the crime scene photos were, or if I got all of the crime scene photos. I never got to see the autopsy photos. And if they're talking about this post-mortem abrasions, I don't know. I'll tell you in a minute why I think this may be just not accurate. But she's saying post-mortem abrasions showing his body had been moved and tire tracks were across his shirtless chest. And I have problems with that. Contents of his wallet were ripped up around him. This is true. So for 25 years, the family has lived without Danny and no resolution. And she's hoping that advance in DNA, which would be good if there's any DNA, would help. And yet our state lab denied further testing in 2015. So they have gone to, let me tell you what the police say, and then I'm going to go to I'll check in with you, and then I'll go to my profile. Where is it? Okay, I can't. Okay, here we go. This is, she sent this, this request for the information. I don't know if that's the information the podcaster got or not, but this is a letter that was written to the Ohio Attorney General. Let me read it for you. Dear Danielle, this is the answer. Dear Danielle, I write to confirm that the Ohio Attorney General's office has processed your records request you submitted on April 18th, 2024. So this is very recent. The request sought copies of any records related to Danny Violette that have been obtained or created in the process of considering his case, as well as any records regarding his case since his body was found on November 4, 1998. And the BCI responded to the scene. The records should include, but not be limited to, all forensic testing performed at the BCI lab and the results, any email or text exchanges discussing Danny Violette's case, detective agent reports to include any narratives, supplements, interviews, field notes, reconstructions, evidence receipts, photographs, written statements, dictations, weather reports, behavioral analysis results, maybe that was mine, and forensic consultation results. Under Ohio Open Meetings Law, I would like to request copies of any records and notes from the meetings about Danny Violette's case. And that says here, like Huron, how do you, I don't know, Huron. Is that Huron? Huron County? Huron County. Sheriff's has only asked the BCI to digitize the records and review the case file, but has not requested BCI's investigative assistance. And blah, 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 blah. It is important to note this case continues to belong to the HCS, and it's still an open investigation. So I don't quite understand what she got, although obviously somebody got my profile. I don't know why they released a profile. I don't know if they released something else. The police did respond in this way. They said last fall, his department is supportive, this is a new sheriff, not the one I dealt with. He said it's supportive of efforts to keep the case alive. Maybe they've got some information we haven't gotten, Ditz said, Dave Ditz. It's still an open investigation. We want information. We really want to see this family get closure on this. Lieutenant Bill Duncan is the sheriff's deputy assigned to this case. And that was all that was said about that. And let me, who did I'm now trying to find who I was working with. I was working with Sheriff Dick Sutherland. That was who was there at the time. And I don't have any of the detectives' names that I dealt with. So that's where the case stands right now. So I don't know what information the family has. Family, if you want to contact me, please do that. You can go to my website, Pat Brown Profiling Agency, and my phone number is there. Also, my email. So you can always get hold of me. And so please, family, if you're there, friends, anybody who's interested in this or watching this, you can hear what I have to say that I think may have happened. And again, this was, as I pointed out in my profile, I said this. The body of Danny Violette Jr., age 17, was found November 4th, 1998 in a cornfield after he had gone missing on Saturday, October 23rd. Wait a minute. There's a misprint there. What the heck is that? Anyway, it was supposed to be 1998. For some reason, I have 2004 there. I don't know. That was a mistype. This profiler had access to the crime scene photos that I know of, that they gave me, and crime scene information that they gave me. But the autopsy and autopsy photos were not available to examine. This profile is therefore based on incomplete information. However, this profiler feels there is enough information to reasonably determine what occurred in the death of Danny Violette Jr. Okay, so I'm going to get into my profile next. Just want to pop over and see what y'all have to say. Why would they not want a profile to have access to all the information? Sounds dubious. Well, again, there's nothing suspicious going on with the police department. Don't go to the point, oh, it's a corruption and all this stuff. That's not it. I don't know. Generally speaking, when a police department actually lets me look at stuff, they let me look at everything. And they say, what do you want to see? And I tell them, and then they bring it to me. Although, every once in a while, I have had some piece of information kept from me, whether they think I might open my big fat mouth, which is reasonable when, well, now 25 years has passed. I don't feel too guilty about it. But unless you have sign a non-disclosure agreement, they don't know whether this profiler might just immediately, we didn't have YouTube back then, but immediately go to the press or something and share pictures or something with somebody or details that they don't want out there for whatever reasons. So in theory, they're asking me to help them, and hopefully they're giving me enough stuff that I can do that to help the police without interfering with whatever they're doing. So I don't know why they chose not to share that, which it did seem a little strange. I think at the time I was a little frustrated because I came from Maryland to Ohio. I did this pro bono, and I would have appreciated having the full information to work with. So, do I think it's a drug issue? There is I believe there's drugs involved in this, and I'm going to show you in my profile. Let's see. Oh, look, this case, Kathy says, this case reminded me of the woman found in a field that the teens spotted from a distance. I did a profile on it. See, I can't even remember that. I did? Another cornfield or just a field? Fields are very popular places to dump people. I don't remember a teen spotted. Oh, yeah. Okay. That was the one where the teen said he saw the body, went over and looked, but then kept going to school. Yeah. I forgot the name of that case, but yes, that's correct. And how can you do a proper profile? Well, it's a good question. It's something for, it's frustrating. That's all I can say. And then one of the problems, of course, as a profiler is If I'm completely off because I never saw the stuff, never got the complete information, I look like a dunce, But again, in theory, profiling is not supposed to be a pronouncement. It's not supposed to be an absolute. Proper profiling and crime scene analysis is not saying, putting it's a white guy, lives with his mother, has a green car and a dog and a knife collection. No, that's not that kind of stuff. You look at the evidence, all the crime scene evidence, the autopsy evidence, the behavioral evidence, and you develop a profile or an analysis of the crime. And it's supposed to be an investigative tool. That's it, an investigative tool. So while everybody's working on a case, you're just like you'd have a ballistics expert put in that information. That's an investigative tool. Even a ballistic expert can be wrong. Okay. Anybody who's doing anything on investigation we're never 100% correct on our analysis for whatever reasons. We don't have enough information. We just see it in a way that maybe it wasn't quite accurate. Who knows? But every one of these things, every person involved is gathering information and putting it together so everybody's essentially an investigative tool, and each person their work is an investigative tool. So it should be used during the investigation process so that at some point those investigative tools will end up helping the police actually get solid evidence that then you have the evidence to arrest somebody. Let's say an investigative tool. Let's say it is let's say it's fingerprint analysis, and you find fingerprints at the scene, and then you check them out and it matches some guy down the block, and you go down to the guy's house and you find that the stuff he stole from that house is in his house. Now you've got evidence, solid evidence. The fingerprints may be interesting but may not be enough proof. Maybe he worked there as a painter. So, but you're saying, wait a minute, I think this guy's suspicious. His fingerprints are there, but they're in a place that I don't know why his fingerprints are in that place. Like perhaps, for example, he paints during the day and he uses the bathroom. And while he's in the bathroom, what he does is unlock the window so that he can come back later and go like this. But while he's painting and he unlocks the window, he leaves a fingerprint on that window. Later on, he comes back with gloves on. So you don't find his fingerprints on the rest of the window. You find it up here. Now, you look at that and you say, the guy has reason to be in the house. His fingerprints may be elsewhere in the house, but why are they there on that? Why are they there on the window like that? That makes you suspicious. So now they match him, and therefore you go to his house and you find the stuff he stole. So that's the tool. So profiling is like that too. My profile, what I had hoped when I did this profile was that would lead the police in a specific direction, that maybe when they went in that direction, they would find more information, solid information, they could then arrest somebody. So that's what a profile is supposed to do. It's not something magical, but it's to be used as a tool in an investigative process. So, all right. That's a good point. Maybe DNA on the ripped up money. Hopefully they've got the ripped up money. Maybe there is DNA in it. That would be really useful. Absolutely. That would be great. I would hope so. Yeah. All right. Let me get to the profile. All right. One of the most important issues in this case is whether the cornfield in which the body was found, it was found right about there in the cornfield, was the primary crime scene or a secondary crime scene. And from what I'm hearing from around out on the internet is a claim that it is a secondary crime scene, that his body was dumped there. And as you can see, even back then when I did the review, which I guess was in 2004, because that's where I think a typo is there for some reason, must have done it in 2004, which was about, 8 years after the crime actually happened. At that point in time, the police were saying the same thing. That's what they thought, that it was a secondary crime scene. They said some other interesting things too. I remember one of them said to me, they thought it was a serial killer and he wasn't sexually assaulted. And I'm like, why would you think it's a serial killer? I don't know why they came up with it. Some of them thought it was a migrant worker because there were people working in fields, and so it was a migrant worker killed him. And so there were a lot of things thrown out, but I never got from them got something that I said, oh, that makes total sense to me. You would say, okay, secondary crime scene as it's too open. All right, that's reasonable to think. Okay, and this is one of the things you do have to think in different directions. Yes, that's reasonable to think. But now, mind you, when you're looking at this field right now, this field doesn't have the corn growing in it. When the field was there, the corn was there, as I believe. The leftover corn stalks were there in the field. Okay, so they weren't like mowed down. Not the pictures I saw. There were corn stalks there in the field, so it was actually quite secluded. But see, that's one of the problems with pictures too. And the original investigators at the crime, they would see right then and there what exactly that place looked like, how secluded it was, how not secluded it was. They would see that. When you come in 8 years later and you look at some photos and you only hope you're seeing what you think you're seeing. And I don't know where this photo came from. I don't know that that's anything to do with the crime scene itself. It's just somebody had a picture that they got off of someplace. So anyway, next, was it the primary secondary crime scene? And from what you were hearing is that the police said secondary, and so did pretty much that's what they told the family. So that's what the family has been told. Some believe Violette was killed elsewhere and dumped in the field. This profiler, however, believes the cornfield was the location Violette was attacked and subsequently murdered. And this makes a huge difference in who you're looking at for a suspect. Okay, number one, the location of the body was not near a good vehicle access point. Remember what the father said, what did the father say? Where was that thing about the father? Where is it? I want to check back on what the father said. He said 100 yards or so off the road. Okay. So there was no evidence that I saw in the photos that there were tire tracks any place. I didn't see that. And so it's quite a distance off the road. The guy would have to drive through the cornfield, sort of. And it didn't seem like a good place. There's easier places to dump a body than several yards off of a road. Now, of course, people say, well, he's got tire tracks on his body, so clearly he was taken out there, dumped, and then the vehicle ran over him, right? That's only if there's really tire tracks on his body. Now, I would love to see those autopsy photos again, because did I misinterpret the marks on his body years ago? Is it possible? Well, of course it is. But I'm going to get to what I thought those marks were. All right. Number two, the location of the body was near a shack, which the victim and his friends hung out. So this wasn't just any cornfield. This area was where there was a kind of a little drug den there. There was a shack, and they hung out in that shack, and they did drugs. So this is not just a accidental pick of a location. This was next to where, if you've ever been to a park, you see teenagers hanging out in a certain area. That's where they always are. They're at the end of that street or the whatever. Well, if something happens in that area and you say, well, that's where they hang out and do drugs, you don't necessarily think that he was murdered someplace else and then brought to that area. Especially, think about this. Should a stranger have killed Violette, it would be highly coincidental that he would have chosen a location at random that was right near the hangout location. What a coincidence, I was just going to dump this body, and I didn't realize it was that shack was a place where my victim, that I do not know who he is or any of his friends, happened to hang out. So that would make no sense. On the other hand, should a friend or acquaintance have killed Violette, it is unlikely that he would have brought the body to that particular location. In other words, if they were someplace else with him, Why would they bring the body back to the location where they hang out and do drugs? Because wouldn't that point the finger at them? So that doesn't make sense. Only someone who knew Violette would be aware of the hangout, and he'll be setting himself up as a likely suspect. Right. So he's not going to do that. So I find this as a dumping site. It doesn't make sense, in my opinion, as a stranger or as a friend or somebody who was your friend. Makes no sense as a dumping site. So 3, with adequate dumping sites areas all around town and outside of town, a stranger passing through would find easier locations to dump the body than way off the road in a cornfield. Now, so there's a good reason why the body would be here. And that would be because that's where things happened, near the shack. So the body would make sense that it was there in that weird spot because the shack is there. There was a trampled area near the body indicating some kind of struggle had occurred there. Well, if he was dumped, there was no struggle in that area. So why would there be a struggle in that area? He's already dead. You just dump him and run. So there was evidence of a struggle. Now, there was a $5 bill in that wallet. The $5 bill was ripped up and thrown next to his body. Do you think a serial killer is going to rip up dollars? Do you think the migrant worker is going to rip up dollars? I mean, it's only $5, but rip it up and throw it there? What are your thoughts? Why would somebody rip up a $5 bill and chuck it next to somebody's body? And if he's already dead, why would they throw the? I mean, what do you think? Ms. Farm, this is good. The Ms. Farmdy, Ms. Farmed. I'm not sure how that goes together. The ripped up $5 bill suggests contempt. And that's exactly what I think. This is all Danny had to pay off a debt, suggest a primary crime scene. That's very well done. That is what I put in my profile. And let me read it to you. The ripped up $5 bill indicates someone was making a point to the victim. Should someone have dumped the victim and then come across $5, it is unlikely he would have any desire to shred a $5 bill rather than just putting it in his pocket. The ripping up of the bill only makes sense if the killer is emphasizing to the victim that his lousy $5 just doesn't cut it. And it also would be very unlikely to rip it up after the fact. More likely he would rip it up before anything actually happened. So, not enough money for a drug deal. Well, that's a good point, and I'll get to that. Anger, disgust, maybe offered them $5 for $10 or $20 worth of drugs. Okay, because it's a drug deal. I don't want your money or a bad deal. Okay, so we got it's a message, right? Oh, there. Okay, Carla, good. Also, a message to anyone not paying off their drug debts. And I'll get to that in a minute because you're on the right track. At least my right track. All right, number 6. The shirt of the victim was found at the location, indicating it most likely had been pulled off during a struggle. So again, it says if this was a secondary crime scene and they're dumping his body, why is his shirt not on his body? Theoretically, they could have been dumping everything that belonged to him at the same location. That's possible. All right. 7, the victim has many scratches and abrasions on his chest and arms, indicating his shirt was off when they occurred. He has none on his back. He also has an odd V-shaped area below his neck, this area. Like I'm trying to figure out how to do this. It's like everything's backwards when you do this. Okay, like this, like a V-shaped area. Okay, like my collar, basically around my collar. Okay. Where there were no scratches or abrasions. Now, by the way, the abrasions on his body that they said were post-mortem, I don't know why they're considered post-mortem at all. Didn't look that way to me. One of the detectives thought that it was a deer that came and pawed at the body after he died. And so there was some deer out in the field going. There was no evidence as there any deer pawing at him, but that was one of the theories. Okay, and you can have anybody can have a theory, and you can maybe test that theory out. However, this is what I think happened. It would seem likely that the victim was attempting to escape his attacker after he ripped up the $5 bill. Now he didn't have the shirt on. Now, whether they at some point tussled and it was pulled off or what, don't know. But he didn't have it on. But there's these scratches. But obviously the shirt was not on when this happened to him, right? Next, this is what I think happened. I looked around here and I said, this is a cornfield. Now, what I did was I ran through the cornfield, okay? So I don't remember if it was that cornfield or another cornfield, but I ran through a cornfield. And what happens when you run through a cornfield is you got to protect your face, okay? Because otherwise your face is going to get ripped up. So you're going to somehow do this or whatever methodology you do to sort of kind of cross your arms and try to put your head down and like that. I ran through the cornfield. This is called crime scene reenactment. And man, are those corn that's really sharp. I mean, they were hitting my arms and I was ouch, 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 ouch. It was not good. When I finished, I had similar abrasions on my body, on my arms, but nothing here because my arms were blocking it. So I think he was running like that. I think he attempted to run through the cornfield away from his attacker. The corn husk would have caused numerous scratches and abrasions in all areas not blocked by his arms, leaving the V-shaped clean area on his upper chest. And again, nothing on his back at all because he was running forward. One of the reasons he might have been a little further in the field away from the shack was because he's running away from the shack, where the altercation happens at the shack, and then they tussle or whatever. Now, one report states that the medical examiner has determined that all the injuries to the victim's body, except for then he says ligature mark on the neck. I'm not so sure about that ligature mark either. And he says all of them were post-mortem. This profiler does not have the autopsy report or the autopsy photos to further examine the point. However, it is not clear in the crime scene photos that the scratches and abrasions are post-mortem. Furthermore, there's no logical reason this profiler can come up with for those scratches and abrasions to appear on the victim's chest post-mortem. The mark, sorry, hold on a second. The marks do not resemble animal damage or damage by a vehicle. So at the time, I did not see that they looked like any kind of tire marks or animal marks. If the body were carried to that location and dumped, those marks would not have been made to the chest of the body. A fireman's carry by one person would prevent the chest from being exposed to any of the corn stalks. And if two people carried the body, the chest would be facing skyward, where no damage would be done. If the body were dragged face down, we ought to see more damage or drag marks and dirt. None of this was there. Also, there were fingernail marks where one would expect to be if the person was conscious at the time he was strangled. So I saw fingernail marks on his neck. This can clearly be seen in the crime scene photos. So these nail marks were unquestionably antemortem. So he was strangled. That's how he was killed. So this is a scenario that I think happened based on the evidence. Now, again, I may be missing evidence. I may be missing proper information. So this is one scenario. Let's not say this is absolute. A scenario. The victim and the attacker met and went to the hangout shack by the cornfield. The attacker expected the victim to pay him a particular amount of money that the victim was unable to come up with. The victim either tried to give the attacker what he had, $5, man, and that pissed him off, and he goes, that's not going to cut it. Or he handed him the attacker grabbed his wallet and found only $5 and was pissed off as well. At this point, the victim attempted to reason with the attacker, which only provoked him more, leading to the attacker ripping up the $5 bill to show the victim how worthless his pittance of money was and to show him he meant business. This escalated to the attacker taking out his anger on the victim. As it would seem, the attacker would use a weapon, if he had one, It is likely he did not actually plan to kill the victim, but lost control of his emotions, leading to the strangulation of Violette. I believe Violette knew his attacker. This is not a stranger homicide. It has been suggested that Violette's killer may have been a migrant worker, but the location of the crime scene makes this unlikely. Also, the ripping up of the $5 bill is not something a stranger would do. Also, if this were a robbery or a sexual assault by a migrant worker, one would expect a weapon would have been used. And Violette would have fought back and harder initially. We don't see a lot of defense wounds on this. So, if you some creepy guys coming at you at the cornfield, you would think you'd be fighting. He probably thought this guy knows he's not going to do that to him. He may have believed that his attacker was just going to tussle with him or maybe try to pin him down or hit him, but not actually kill him. Remember, he's a wrestler. So he might have thought it's not, we're just going to be guy things, stupid guy things. He may have thought he could just run away and the guy would leave him alone. Even when he was brought to the ground, he may have been thinking he was just going to wrestle the guy and suddenly found something constricting his neck. And at this point, it was too late to fight the attacker off. So, and the whole ligature thing, I'm not absolutely sure. There were fingernail impressions. Now it's possible he was trying to get his, a ligature off of his neck. I can't remember the crime scene photos well enough. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know about that. The guy could have used a belt around his neck or a rope or whatever, or strangled him with hands. I didn't have the autopsy photos, and I don't know how I saw something. I saw the finger marks obviously on the crime scene photos. I don't know what else I saw because it's been 25 years, or 2004, 20 years for me. The location and the lack of an immediate fear reaction and self-defense attempts indicates that not only did Violette know his attacker, but he had not just made his acquaintance. Because there was no apparent use of a weapon, it would be unlikely this was a robbery attempt. Because there was no apparent sexual attack, it would be unlikely this was a sexual predator. Rage is evident at the crime scene. Therefore, the attack is likely a response to a real or imagined offense to the killer. Unless there is a long relationship between the killer and victim, rage is likely to be short-lived. The offense would have to have occurred shortly before the assault on the victim. So it wasn't some big pre-planned, I hate you, dude, I'm going to take, not something that, not some kind of huge revenge killing or something like that, but something that was fairly immediate. So either something happened right there at the shack that day, or the day before, something had led up to it. But I mean, like a shorter time span within the day or so. Now, this the thing. I'm not going to give you the name of the guy that I had as my suspect because it is blacked out. Okay, it's redacted. Is the most likely suspect in this crime. I'll call him suspect A. He was angry that Violette had not paid for the LSD he had given him. So there was a drug deal between Danny Violette and this suspect A. So suspect A had sold him LSD and stated just the day before the disappearance of Violette that, quote, Violette better get his money back to him or he kick Violette's ass. When somebody basically makes a threat, they're going to kill somebody, they don't get their money, and then that person ends up dead and the little bit of money is ripped up next to him, you kind of think this would be a good suspect. Suspect A, is a classmate of Violette's at the Pioneer Joint Vocational School in Selby. He has a criminal record with sex and firearms offenses. Clearly, he's a drug dealer as well. He changed his initial story and initially refused to take a polygraph. So he had one story, then his story changed. Sign of some deception there. He refused to take the polygraph, sign of deception. Now, this profiler has been told that suspect A was cleared after being interviewed and by passing a polygraph. Do I believe this is true? I don't know. First of all, just because you were interviewed doesn't mean they interviewed him in a way that they figured out he did it. And secondly, the polygraph, I don't know if he did take it or that I was just told that. I don't know if he took it and was able to pass it because psychopaths can do that. And this guy's probably a psychopath. But it's really hard to believe. And I said that he should be investigated for the following reasons. Reinvestigated now. He knew the victim, and the killer knew the victim. He went to high school with the victim. The killer went to a teenage hangout location, met the victim at the teenage hangout location. So suspect A went to school with the victim and went to the shack with the victim and sold the victim drugs and threatened the victim if he didn't get his money. He was looking for the victim to return his money, and the next day the victim went missing. He said he would assault the victim if he didn't get the money. The killer was in a rage and ripped up the $5 bill and assaulted the victim. The chances of these being coincidences are unlikely. Since this is not a stranger homicide, one of Violette's acquaintances would have to be the killer. There are no other good suspects than suspect A, nor does anyone have any other motive than suspect A. Suspect A is clearly an impulsive person prone to anger and willing to act out on his criminal behaviors. And is this criminal profile's belief that he did just that on October 25th, 1998. So, is it October 25th? I'm always looking back to see whether, okay. He went missing on the 23rd. I think he would be dead on the 23rd. I don't know. I don't know what the typing here is. I've questioned my own profile for bad typing errors. But anyway, no, of course, it could have been the 25th. I don't know why. I'm not quite sure why I had the 25th. They don't know where he was and exactly how long he was in the field. So it's possible he was someplace else, but nobody had seen him since. So he was with somebody, whoever that somebody was. So, suspect sounds real. Yeah, he's quite shady. Yes, there's no question about it. Did he do it? Well, I don't know. This is the problem. I can't say he did do it. But I think when I went there, I asked about all kinds of other possible suspects, and there was nothing else that was very good. So this guy is either really amazing that everything matches him, and he threatened Danny as well, and it wasn't him. And he also changed his story and refused a polygraph. So I mean, he's got a criminal record. I mean, everything points to him. I mean, points to suspect A. But could it be suspect B? If there is a suspect B or C, sure, it could be. But Carla says, who is reporting suspect A's threats? A credible witness or someone covering for him or herself? Him or herself by pointing the finger at suspect A. I can't answer that because I don't know at this point, 20 years later, whether I obviously had that information. And at the point it certainly seemed credible. But he was a known drug dealer. I think there was, from what I remember, it was credible. But I can't actually say. I can't prove it at this point in time because it's been 2 decades, and I don't have the paperwork. Let's see what else you got to say. Okay. Lack of defense wounds suggests that Danny knew the killer and did not think he was in any danger of serious physical harm. Yes. Danny had likely dealt with the killer in the past. You were doing very well on your profiling skills, Ms. Farmed. Yes. That is what I think. I mean, if you've got a crazed killer after you, unless you're completely drugged out, which, again, I think that I cannot believe this is a secondary crime scene because there was an altercation there. The $5 bill's ripped up there, and he's got they matched when I did this. They matched the corn husks and the stalks hitting my hands. And then he ends up face down there and you strangle. So to me, something happened right there and then he ran. But if it had been a complete stranger, some guy suddenly appears with a cutlass, a machete, a big knife, or whatever, I think you would see a lot more. I think he might have become aware that the guy was getting scary when he ran away from him. But when the guy caught up with him, it appears that he caught him from behind and then started strangling him. So it was kind of too late to do anything about it. But there wasn't an actual, there might have been a tussle, yelling and pulling on his shirt and saying, "You jackass," and she ripped his shirt off. And it's like that kind of stuff, which you don't think is going to end up in, the guy's going to murder you, because you do know him and you've known him for a while. That guy might be unhappy with you, but you figure he's probably saying things like, "Hey man, I'll get you the rest of the money. Come on, just give me a few days. I'll get you the money." And the other guy's just, for whatever reasons. But you have people who are, both of them have behavioral issues, and unfortunately they know each other. In my opinion, the person who killed him and Danny. So yeah, I just don't think it's a stranger homicide at all, and I just don't think it's a secondary dump site. But hey, if the family, if you're out there and you've gotten a hold of the actual autopsy photo and the autopsy photos and the autopsy reports, I don't know who did the autopsy. I don't know how good they were. I mean, not every medical examiner or coroner is that good at whatever happened, at doing some of these things. I just remember when I looked at those marks on his body, I couldn't come up with those as being post-mortem. But I say maybe it's been years. I've been in the business a lot longer than those were my early years. I mean, could I be wrong? Well, sure. But again, I didn't see tire tracks. I saw corn stalks. I think it started in the shed because that's the hangout. They're meeting there. Some stranger would just accidentally pick to dump his body in the field near the shed. Makes no sense. And if you were killing him someplace else, I just don't think you would put him back near the hangout where, that would point to you. Yeah. Yeah. So so for now, I absolutely believe it. Nancy says the original. I still have nightmares from the original Children of the Corn. Yeah. Oh my God. Loretta says, "Pay your drug dealers, people, especially the shady ones." Well, all drug dealers are shady ones. So better yet, abstain. That would be even better. But one of the problems we have is that, when you hang out with shady people, unfortunately, they don't necessarily exhibit great behavior. I mean, there's a reason they end up in lockup all the time and commit a bunch of offenses is because, and this guy, the suspect A, showed violent tendencies. So, but when you have issues yourself, emotional issues or bipolar issues, you're taking lithium, but you're also smoking weed and drinking. I mean, and doing LSD. Your perception of people is a little blurry, shall we say, and a lot of times when you're that age doing that kind of stuff, a lot of behavior around you that if you even remember looking back yourself at your earlier years, if you're over teen and 20 years old now, if you remember going to parties and seeing some of the behavior at parties, it was just trashy behavior, people acting stupid, people getting in, starting to shriek at each other. All kinds of weird stuff happens at places that you went to because the people around you are doing drugs or drinking a lot of alcohol. So they have bizarre behavior sometimes, and they become enraged easily. So you got a lot of bad behavior. I don't know that his behavior was particularly healthy either. So, but all it takes is one to go a little farther. And that day, I think he did. Well, thank you, CJ. Well, this is true. They haven't found a satisfactory answer. No, they haven't. I don't know, again, what they're missing. Well, it's still an open case. And they don't. The sheriff's department doesn't have to share anything with the family, but it has been 25 years since Danny was murdered. That's a long time. So, at a certain point, the problem gets to be this. This is why I say so many times when when you look at cold cases, the way they get solved is DNA, and very rarely through somebody like a profiler or somebody analyzing stuff. Because let's say I'm right. Let's say it is suspect A, but there's no DNA. What you going to do about it? Unless he confesses, what are you going to do about it? It's too late. So if they didn't pull that guy in really quickly and find that he had, I don't know, some evidence connecting him to that dang cornfield, at that point in time, they had a threat from him. He was a drug dealer, and he supposedly owed him money. And if that is accurate, they had a guy that was a good suspect, a very good suspect, but they did not arrest him. They said they cleared him. I don't know how they cleared him, and they did not tell me they cleared him. They cleared him by supposedly they interviewed him and he passed a polygraph, which I don't know is true. And besides which, you can pass those things, or it could have been, I don't know. I just don't know. But they didn't clear him, it seems, with an alibi. An alibi would clear him if he were at the, I don't know. Of course, they don't exactly know when Danny went missing. They know when he left the house. They just don't know where he was. Was he with certain people that won't admit they were with him? Was he just with one guy? Was he off by himself for a while and then popped back up? I don't know, any of this stuff. But they didn't have enough to arrest the guy. But they didn't tell me he had an alibi. Suspect A, as far as I know, did not have an alibi, or they would have said, because that's the number one thing you can clear somebody with. You can have a fake alibi. Like my girlfriend, I was at my girlfriend's house, or my mommy says I was with her. Yeah, that's a fake alibi. And of course, they don't know I don't know if they know the exact time of death, having found him so many days later. So, or even the day of death. So that becomes a problem. And I did have a 2-day later time as his death date. And I just don't know why I have that there. So I don't know, again, whether it's some kind of mistype or whether they told me that he was only dead so many days. I just don't know, because it's been too many years and I don't have a pile of notes on the case. I don't know why I don't have a bunch of notes on the case. I just got a few. It could be just they were in files that are so old that something happened to them, or I just can't find them. I don't know. But yeah, so let's say I'm right and it's suspect A. What are they going to do about it? Can they connect him to the crime scene 2.5 decades later? And if they can't, that's not going to be a good enough case to go to court. They could sit back and say, yeah, we think he did it. It's possible. It is possible that when I came in 8 years later, and they were still telling me it was a serial killer or a migrant worker, that's what I was being told. And I was like, that's just not, no, I don't think it's either one of those. And when I gave that profile, it's possible they went, oh, man, she could be right. But they couldn't do anything about it. So they don't want to admit that I could be right, because it doesn't look good, Yeah. So it's like one of those things you want to keep. The profile gives you something, you want to hide it. So unless you can disprove it, but if you think it actually could be right and you can't arrest the guy, they don't want to let the family know it's this guy. Maybe the profile is right, but we screwed up 8 years ago. I don't know because I don't know how much of accurate statement I got from them on that, but they said he was cleared, and I don't find an interview and a polygraph any way to clear anybody. So I don't know if they were just saying that just to, I don't know. I wish I did. I can see that's what the families go through. I mean, for me, it's not my child that I can't get answers about. But for the family, this is the same kind of rigmarole they get a lot of times. It's an open case. We can't discuss it. We can't show you this. And sometimes you're told things that aren't even necessarily accurate. Like some cases where they've said, oh, they told me that I was right. And then they told the family she couldn't help us. I'm like, well, thanks. And then the family thinks it's true. Yeah. There's a good point. Okay. DNA may not be enough evidence. That is also true. Like someone else knows who killed Danny and has not talked. Drug dealers love to brag. Well, yeah, this gets very convoluted there, right? If the investigation isn't able to hone in quick enough and find out the truth anywhere in there, that's correct. Also, what the DNA, I would say, if the DNA is as far as the money goes, I mean, a lot of people could have handled that money. Now, if suspect A fingerprints were actually on that money or DNA on that money, it would be at this point touch DNA, because it wouldn't be blood evidence. It would be touch DNA. And I always say that touch DNA is questionable stuff because it's very transferable. So in theory, he could have touched that $5 bill at another time, or he could have touched something and somehow got on there. I don't know that would be sufficient enough for court either. When I talk about why DNA actually succeeds, it's like a sexual homicide, and you've got semen or you've got blood, then you got something you can really, really work with. In this case, it was a strangulation, so and there's no evidence that the killer bled on him. So I don't honestly know how they would put this case to bed. I just probably not. Wait a minute. If anything Slim Shady would ever happen to me, I want you to be my criminal profiler. You rock. Well, thank you, Melanie. Yes, a lot of people touch the same bills. That is true. But, in this case, because the bill was ripped up, it would be interesting if his DNA was on the bill. But would it be enough to charge? I don't know how they would charge in this case. So I think that's why probably it's just sitting there cold. Now, could they have done more in the beginning? Yes. But I don't have access at this point to all the police reports to know whether they followed through properly on everything. I would like to see the interview. I want to see. I don't think I saw that. The interview. They interviewed. Why would I have not seen that? They interviewed suspect A, but did they let me see the interview? Because I would have loved to have done statement analysis on that. So again, family, if you got the interviews of anybody, I'd like to see them. Of course, it could all be redacted, and that'll be problematic. Unless the guy's saying, I told him I'd kick his butt, then I know which one we're talking about. But I for some reason, it doesn't seem like I have a lot of information on this guy as far as his own words go, except for that one statement. So I'm not quite sure whether they ever gave me the interviews or whether they just gave me the crime scene stuff. And basically gave me 20% of the information, and that's what I worked with. So, that's a good point. If the killer had no relationship with Danny, DNA would provide more robust evidence. This is very true. This is what I pointed out with the JonBenet Ramsey murder. The whole thing with John Ramsey, dad is going, hey, we got to get more DNA testing. Well, all the DNA they're testing is touch DNA. So first of all, the whole family could, one of them could touch her, and it wouldn't make any difference as far as saying whether they had any involvement in her death or not, because they touch. Then again, it's also touch DNA. They found in that case, I think, one female DNA, touch DNA, and two males, or maybe three males. And unless there was a whole group, a man and two men and a woman all down there in the, killing JonBenet, it's very likely that's all transfer DNA, because that's what touch DNA does. Now, and she went to parties. She was at a parties. There's just so much touching going on with the kids. Could be that DNA is female and male. People always think it's adults. What if it's just a female kid and two little boys' DNA? No, I don't think they DNA'd every kid she touched. So, and that touched her. So all of that is pretty meaningless. Now, when you say If it's a stranger, it's more robust. Yes, if remember John Mark Carr who said he killed John Benet Ramsey? Right. If John Mark's car touched DNA popped up on her panties, I'm going to say it's John Mark Carr, because how else would John Mark's car DNA show up there unless he was there? I mean, the chances of it transferring from him to her would be extraordinarily unlikely, almost like just not happening. Now, I have pointed out one case, and I'll say it again here because this is true. There was a guy who was murdered in a park, and they got DNA from him and touched DNA, and it matched a homeless guy that also was in that area. And they went to arrest him, and the only reason that guy didn't go to prison was because at the time of the murder, he was in the ICU. So what happened was he was picked up by the ambulance, and they used whatever they used on him, like the cuff or whatever. I think it was maybe the finger thing for the check your oxygen or whatever it is. They had that on him, and they did not clean it when he went to the hospital. They just taken it off, and then they put it on the other guy, and that's how the DNA transferred. I can't remember all tiny details, but his alibi was he was in the ICU. Thank God he was in the ICU, because otherwise they would say, why is this homeless man's DNA on this guy? Well, so he was a stranger, but that would be one of the situations. They both were in the area, and there could be some weird reason why that would be true. But I mean, if John Mark Carr said he killed John Benet and his touch DNA showed up on her, I'd be good with that arrest. Of course, I do not believe it was a stranger homicide. However, but yes, the case that Darlene Krashok case, which I analyzed for years ago and also did a show on. Darlene Krashok case, that case remained unsolved for a couple decades. And then they did new DNA testing. And the reason that DNA testing made sense was it was a stranger to her, basically. And this guy just happened, and when they did the DNA test, just happened to live in the exact area that she lived in at the time and went to the same clubs that she went. So the chances of it being him were very, very strong. And I have to watch that video to see why it probably is him. And also because the defense attorney wanted me to do some stuff. And then when they found I wasn't going to agree with certain things, they jumped ship. So it makes me question that they know he did it. But so there are times when it's like the only way that person's DNA could be there would be that they killed the person. So touch DNA. But most of the time, the DNA that's going to really, really be good proof is semen DNA and blood DNA. But again, sometimes that's just meaningless too, because let's say a woman goes and she has sex with one guy and then she goes and gets murdered. So again, you have to be very careful about these things to find out, is there a totality of the evidence actually saying that this person committed the crime? I think it'd be very hard to solve this crime and take it to court. You could solve it. As I always point out, you can solve something. You like behind the scenes, you can say, we know who did it, but that'll never go to court. So, this question was already asked. What's the point if they're going to withhold evidence? The problem is a lot of times it's just that they don't like to share stuff. It's a lot of things are very it's my case type of thing, and I don't want to share that, or I don't want this getting out. Or there's reasons for things. Some of the reasons are legitimate, and some are more ego issues. So, yeah, but you should theoretically have everything. That would be useful. Yes, absolutely. All right. That's a good question. Laura says, what is the most important part of an investigation for you to have access to? Wow. That's really hard to answer in the sense that you never know where the most information comes in. Again, this is an investigative tool to simply point in the best direction I would know to go investigate further. So, I mean, I want the crime scene photos. I want the autopsy photos. I want the photos very much so, because that, to me, at least that I can look at, and not somebody's not telling me, oh, guess that's what happened to him is this. It's like, I was told deer pawed at his body, but when I looked at those pictures, there's not deer pawing. I mean, if I didn't see the pictures, I would say, well, I guess they told me it was deer pawing. I mean, what do I know? Because I can't see anything. So I would say that, to me, being at the crime scene would be the best thing. But of course, that's not what happens unless you are actually, working with the police department as a detective. So a person who is not doing that right there at the scene is going to rely on what can be given to them after the fact. So the photos, absolutely. And really good photos, good videos. If you can have access to the crime scene even later, a week later or 2 weeks later or whenever, so you can see the layout of the land, that super helps. The autopsy photos, definitely. The autopsy and the autopsy, hopefully also a very good description, an autopsy with the proper information on it. Because it's the last case. If you don't have an autopsy that actually shows you a diagram and puts the holes in their bodies or whatever, then you sometimes you don't know what you're looking at. So that's very helpful too. With the Darlene Crashop case, the most important thing in that case to me was these round things on her butt, which were like, you get two lines that went around like this, and then another one that went around like this. They were impressions on her butt. And I went out and searched for what those could be. And what I came up with is Minwax cans, these metal Minwax cans. And also both of those two circles had a flat side to it, like somebody pried up the can and flattened one side. And when I matched it millimeter from millimeter, they matched exactly. So I was like, hey, look for a guy who uses this kind of thing, like maybe something in painting, shellacking, whatever, with the furniture, motorcycles, whatever. And they had to be they had to be laying on the floor of a van for her to be on top of them. So I said, this guy's got a van, and it's got an area in the back where her whole body can lay down flat. So those photos were very important to me. But sometimes it's the interviews that give you extra information that you really need. Really just need everything you can get your little hands on. That would make the huge difference. But when you're missing big chunks of stuff, you can still do the best you can to help the investigation, but you could be more off if you don't have the information than if you do. So, but that's a good question. So I think I'm back to the bottom of that. Okay, so, well, that's very nice, Michaela. I think you nailed it, Pat. Well, I don't know, and I may never know. And one of the frustrating things about doing profiling when you're not working with the police department right up front or coming in years later or whatever is that a lot of times you don't ever know. And so this is why I call this an educational channel. I hope to teach, because somewhere along the way, there'll be detectives who will have their own cases, and they'll say, well, I remember when Pat Brown analyzed that case, and that might be useful for them in the case that they're looking at themselves right there and then. And it may make a difference. I'll never know. Probably I'll never, find out whether my teaching ever, produced anything in the real world. But I can always hope. And if I don't do that, at least I can also help people just understand things. And a lot of you are here for that. You're about the mushroom lady. Oh yeah, one for me and my family, and one for my enemies. Is it common for law enforcement to dismiss someone as a suspect solely because they pass a polygraph? Is beating a polygraph an automatic ticket to clearing? One would hope not. I don't know how. Yeah, should not. I mean, the whole point of a polygraph is really it's really an interview tool, an interrogation tool to mess with people's minds. That's mostly what it is. There are times when you can tell by the behaviors and by the way they answer questions that you can believe that they did pass the polygraph. There was no signs of deception. You didn't see any, all the way around, you don't see any signs of deception, including the polygraph. But if you exclude somebody as a suspect just because of the polygraph, you're making a big mistake. Yeah. And you cannot clear somebody that way. You can say they're not our top person of interest unless the person has a 100% alibi. He should never go off the person of interest list, because, well, it's like the McCann case, where so much of the media will claim that the McCanns have been cleared of any wrongdoing in their daughter's disappearance. That is not true. That's not, the Portuguese never cleared them. And they shouldn't, even if they didn't do anything, because they were there and there's been no proof of an abduction. So maybe there was an abduction, but it's just never been proven. But until there's somebody else who's proven to literally have done it and not Christian B, which is zero proof on at all, how can you take them out of the equation when they had opportunity and to do something? So they should be persons of interest regardless, and they are persons of interest in Portugal. So, unless an alibi is something that the ICU is a great alibi. You were in another country. You were on television at the time. You were in prison at the time. I mean, those are solid alibis. Saying you were home with your girlfriend is not a solid alibi. That's just what you claim. And that's what she claims. Is that proof that you were there? No. So sometimes there's proof with video cameras at a store location or a gas station or a bank and those kind of things, receipts and stuff that could really make a difference. The one case I was talking about, that the McStay family who went missing and ended up in the desert, that one of the favorite suspects is a guy that is kind of creepy. And they're like, he did it. And it's like, but he was in Hawaii at the time. The family was murdered in California. You can't drive back and forth. I mean, so there has to be evidence if he wasn't a suspect. If he was not a suspect, there has to be evidence he got on a plane and flew to Hawaii and was in Hawaii the whole time until he flew back. In that case, he couldn't have done it. That's an alibi. That's when you can clear somebody. We cleared him because you couldn't have done it. He could not, under any circumstance, have done it. But if you can't say you've absolutely proven he couldn't have done it, then he should remain, at least as a person of interest, even if way low on the list. You can say, well, I don't think it's him. That's fine. But don't say he's cleared if you don't have any reason to clear him. So, well, there's a problem. So much legal stuff is complete BS. I don't know how you get any convictions at all. It's a mess. And it really is very, very difficult these days. Oh, well, I want to go up here. Oh, I see a thing on Peter Hyatt, who is one of my favorites. Taylor says, how the polygrapher words the questions greatly matters. Peter Hyatt emphasizes using the subject's own language. Yes, but with the thing about polygraph is that you can't be wishy-washy. You can't say, are you responsible for your wife's murder? That's not a good question, because let's say you feel responsible because you were supposed to be home with her and you weren't. So you do feel responsible. Okay, that's not the question. Did you murder your wife? That's a question. There's no wishy-washy there. So usually it's like a 4-question thing, and the 4 questions should be very, very clear, so that there's no mistaking that the person can pass it or not pass it. So, but even then, they can just lie like a dog, and if they're good at it, they're good at it. So, but it's usually used so you can see if you can trip the person up during the polygraph, or see the reactions to things. And when they do fail miserably, that might be an indication, But again, that's not proof that they committed the crime either. People have failed polygraphs and been innocent. So, yeah. Somebody's podcast is getting hate. Why would they get hate? We all get hate. I mean, it's hate. The internet revolves around hate half the time. It really does. People get podcasts get hate. I don't know which one you're talking about. Podcasts get hate and YouTube gets hate a lot of times because the people who hate them disagree with what they're saying about a particular case. That's why my hate is strongest on Karen Reed trial, Madeleine McCann, John Bonet, West Memphis 3. And these are cases a lot of people won't touch. A lot of experts and profilers, they won't even touch the case and talk about it because they don't want all the hate. But sometimes what they will do is whatever way the wind blows, they'll go with it. In other words, if they see it, that the public outcry is headed this direction, they want to stick with that because they feel safer, because they're not going to get hated, and because it's not fun. So, but yeah. If you're on YouTube or have a podcast, you're going to get a lot of nasty stuff. Oh, my goodness. Well, no, I would not say the Ouija board is quite the same. I think it has uses, but don't worry about me. I mean, I get so much hate. I mean, it's like, if you don't have a strong sense of self, it can be very disturbing. But if you've been around for enough years as I have, I fielded hate since I went on television in 2003. So I've had 20 years of hate, and I'm still here. So, it's I say the only hate I really care about is hate from my family or friends. That would upset me, or I do find that hate from other professionals is concerning sometimes. That they have to, when they call me a fraud and say call me names, that's they can just say they disagree with me and they don't but they a lot of times I've gotten that from some FBI profilers and a few other people around that really trash me in a very, very vicious way. And I find that more concerning for the field than for myself. I mean, what are you going to do? But for the field, if we can't, like, profilers don't have to come out of just one place. People, different experiences, they come from different backgrounds. It's okay. We can have more than 10 profilers in the world. It's okay if we have 100. If they've gained skills and can do that. I don't always agree with other profiles, and they don't have to agree with me. I've said this over and over. And it's okay. But what we want to do is be able to say why we think this and why we think that, and learn from each other, and allow more than one opinion to be out there, especially if expert opinions, without being rude about it, and calling people names and saying, I can't, oh, Pat Brown's a fraud. Why are you calling me that? Because you don't agree with what? That I'm not FBI. I've never been FBI, so therefore I'm a fraud. Okay. But you're not. What they're not doing is arguing. I don't even know what they're arguing. Basically, it's an ego thing. There's a huge amount of egos, and that's unfortunate. And so, but yeah, that's the way it is. But I'm more concerned about that because I find it damaging. I want to see profiling be used in police departments. I want detectives to learn profiling or have profilers embedded in police departments. And I want more proper training, because, people can say whatever they want about me, but I'm 68, I got a limited time frame for working, as far as being part of the field. I'm not getting hired by a police department at my age. I mean, I can't become a police detective. That's not going to happen. I can't join the FBI. I'm too old, because that's the way it is. And so I can teach. I've gotten to the point where I'm able to teach because that's something I can do. So I know there needs to be new people, younger people moving into the fields. Just like if no matter what field you're in, if as you've been in the field for 30 or 40 years, you hopefully will inspire new people coming into the field to be well trained in medicine or in law or whatever else, and not go, oh, you're a horrible person because you. Why are you doing that? Because you're leaving the field. So shut up and let other people come in at some point. Yeah. So yeah. Immaturity never ends. Some people are immature to the day they die. But that's the way it goes. So anyway, that's what I'm going to say about this. Again, if you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. If you're the family or friends and you want to contact me with information, I would be happy to look at that. If you're the podcaster dude, where are you? I don't know what happened to you, but I don't know what you quite want me to help with the investigation. I don't help with investigations, so I guess we weren't actually asking me to be on there. So I'm not quite sure what you were trying to do, but you can still contact me. That's fine. If there's some way I can help, but again, I'm not spending hundreds of hours investigating things that aren't unless I have the stuff that's useful. I'm not going to be doing that. And I don't know even if I have the autopsy photos and autopsy reports and everything else, the crime scene photos again. I'm willing to look at it just because now I'm interested. How much I'm going to be of use, I don't actually know at this point, because I personally think it'd be very hard to solve this crime. Solve it by going to prosecution with it. So, but it could be a miracle. Anyway, so I will be back on Thursday at 7:00 for the hangout. I'm heading to San Antonio, Texas tomorrow. I'll be there until Wednesday evening. So I will be away, and I'll go see the Alamo and ride a little boat down the Riverwalk and see my sister. So that's what I'm going down there for. So, I'll be back on Thursday for the hangout. So hopefully we'll see you then. And hang in and don't let people hate you too badly. Just the people in your own circle. All the people on the internet, they hate you. It doesn't really matter because you don't even know them. So just worry about the people that are, important to you. Bye.